Hi, everybody. I have brought this episode episode of our Basis channel, and I am bringing this um, with collaboration of Alessandra Villela, who is one of our BCBAs in Chicago, Illinois. And she is also one of our partners here, one of our BCBAs here in Chicago. She is also currently enrolled in her PhD, and I'm going to leave the rest to her. So as soon as she comes on, she's going to talk about her, and I'm going to ask her to introduce herself to you guys. So we are going to so she's here, and why the reason that I brought her on today is that I wanted to talk to her about what are the services that can be provided to kids or people who are from different whose first language is not English, right? So she's going to talk about from the perspective of the Spanish population, which is the Hispanic population, but also she's going to talk about some strategies that can be used for other populations as well. So of course it can be generalized to the other population, which is population that is either another population or so on and so forth. So here is Alessandra, she's joining us, and I am just going to let her talk now. Hi Alessandra, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for doing this interview for us for Basis, because it's going to go international now. So we're going to post it on our YouTube page. So it's going to be watched by a lot of people all over the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
I would like you to introduce yourself first, and then we'll go into some question and answers.
Sure. So thank you again for having me. My name is Alessandra Villela, and I currently live in Chicago, Illinois, of the United States. I graduated with my master's degree in applied behavior analysis at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. I currently am going for my PhD in applied behavior analysis at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology as well. I do work as a board certified behavior analyst, BCBA, for over a year now. And I have worked with adults and children who have developmental disabilities and or autism for over 5 years.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And I think it's really important over here to mention that you are a new BCBA, but you have been doing this for a long time, and you've done it in a lot of capacities. And it's the same for me. It's like I've done it in multiple capacities. We were doing the same work, but we never used, we've shaped it up as per the contingencies of the coursework that we did. But you've been doing it, so you have this experience for all this time. I know that in your class also you talk really passionately about English for those participants whose English is a second language, and you were focusing on Spanish speakers. And I know that you and we have collaborated on some families, and there was actually a family that we were trying to get services for. So what do you have to say about how can we work with families whose first language is not English, because all of our task list and everything is in English right now for the ABA. So
Right. Yeah, great question. I think that before I get to an answer, I wanted to say that a lot of the the underpopulated communities or underserved communities, such as the Latinx community, the children who have autism or developmental disabilities are often diagnosed at a way later age compared to the non-Latinx families, and possibly receive services at a way later age or possibly never. So that's a huge concern in underserved communities at the moment. And with that coming along, they receive also fewer evidence-based treatments and less medical specialty care for those who are Latinx. And one thing that I do want to stress is that a lot of time there's a language barrier, just like you mentioned, Juhi, in terms of English being a second language to these Spanish speaking families. So a lot of the times what I find myself doing is translating almost all of the like ABA, applied behavior analysis terms, and not only translating them to Spanish, but also in layman's terms in Spanish. It could be a bit difficult, but what I have done is I usually type out my assessments and I translate them all the questions in Spanish. That way it's a little bit more feasible for the families to read, and then for me to ask them as well. A lot of children who are underserved and eventually are diagnosed with autism or developmental disability sometimes don't have the health insurance that's required to receive ABA services at an early age, which is sometimes what scares these families, and they hold back from asking for that help. So I do want to stress the fact that there are resources out there. We just have to help these parents, find those resources and explore and do their research as well with our assistance.
You know what? It's really, it's really good that you brought this point out, because what I wanted to stress over here was that even back home, because I've served a lot in the Middle East, and then I've worked in Pakistan right now. We have the same problem over there, because what happens is that because the evidence-based practices are not so common, and that's what I'm fighting for right now, the diagnosis is not that clear, and the diagnosis happens at a later age. For example, they might get the diagnosis, might start PI, which is early intervention, but the kids that are towards the suburban areas, like, areas that are away from the cities, they are not getting the diagnosis, and then there's no proper treatment for them, right? So basically they'll be like, oh, he's just angry, he's just like his dad, or he's like his uncle, because his uncle was so,
Max, be quiet.
His uncle was so rude, or whatever. So, or his uncle used to be so angry and he used to have so many outbursts, or his dad had outbursts, so he's having outbursts, but they don't realize that it's like so important to get these diagnoses out soon. So we have a lot of concern with that back home also, and because we're a newer practice, that's,
can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Newer practice, so that's why I think that this gets shoved under the rug, the diagnosis of it. And then, the stigma, there's a huge stigma that is attached with it also. And I know that you were talking about, like, when you had taken, you went on a vacation or a holiday a couple of months ago to your homeland, and you were talking about how you wanted to work over there also with the population. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'm sorry, you said that you wanted, I'm sorry, what was your question? I'm just having technical difficulties. I apologize.
No, it's okay. So I know you traveled back home and you were talking about like starting or working over there with the population, because I think that in that part of the area too, is it South America?
Yeah, so I am from Honduras and also from Mexico. So yes, it is in Central America, actually.
Central America. So we have issues over there, the same issues that we're having in the Middle East and in Pakistan, India, the same problems. And I think that, the board has translated some things in different languages, but not in all languages. And then, I think that what do you have to say about like the myths that are affiliated with autism? Like, how do you see that commonly everywhere? Like about the exorcism and, the mental illness and things like that. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have. And just not being able to receive these services in different areas of the world, and not being able to get the appropriate resources is what holds a lot of these children and even adults from getting the services that they deserve. So I do notice that a lot of times in third world countries, such as Honduras and or Mexico, there's not as much of the specialty specialty care that's required for these individuals. And it's very important to disseminate. And I want to and I apologize for the background noise, but my goal is to disseminate and I really want to disseminate ABA in Honduras and other countries eventually, just kind of like what you're doing as well.
Okay, so can you tell us of some good tools that you have found throughout your career in Spanish or in any other language that can be used for assessment, for treatment with kids who are diagnosed not only with autism? See, here's the thing, and this is what I keep on telling people, that ABA is synonymous to autism just because evidence-based practices, it has shown to have improvement, insurance is covering it over here, but in other countries they are not, like in Dubai, in Pakistan, India, Honduras, they are not covering it. So again, we can provide ABA for any kind of disability, right? So what kind of tools do you think have you found along your path that are evidence-based and they're good?
Yeah, great question, Juhi. Thank you. I think somewhere to really start with is when is definitely in the special education programs that they have in different schools. If some schools don't have special education programs, I think that it needs to be stressed that the education system needs to look into these programs so that all families can have individualized education programs for the children in the schools. And I think that that's a huge resource that I had found that's very helpful and supportive. Getting that from early on stage in schools, and also getting a lot of support resources and support groups from social media. I think that that's a huge way, an important way to communicate some of the needs that these parents are also trying to look for or explore or search. Just like I mentioned before, some of the Latinx families, they hold back from getting this extra help because they don't know about it. They're not aware about it. The knowledge is not all there. And since ABA is also a growing career for us, it's still underrepresented in underrepresented communities. And I think it's very important that families and us as BCBAs and as workers, we provide the knowledge to these families by showing support through social media groups, because I think nowadays a lot of people have social media and we can get acclimated and find these resources online. But I think that that's very important. That's a very important place to start.
Okay, and then what about so do you have any suggestions for, because I think this is a question that a lot of parents have, and every time I've done sessions, they like live sessions on Facebook, verbal behavior. So do you have any tips and tricks because I know that you're doing your PhD and your classes have been in verbal behavior. So do you have any tips and tricks to increase the verbal repertoire of children that are at home these days, especially because of what's going on? A lot of our parents are, doing the therapy also of the children. So would you give any tips for the kids?
Yeah, I definitely have a lot of tips that I've utilized like in my work specialty as well. So these are just some tips that are pretty easy to do on an everyday basis. So for example, when it comes to verbal behavior and communicative acts, frequency, form, and the function of it is very, very important. So always understanding that is an important tool to use in terms of communication. But for example, with a lot of families that don't have that knowledge yet, a lot of good and feasible tips can be training in everyday environments is a very huge thing. And that's as simple as like, if the child is still learning how to use their verbal communication, their speech, having, like, for example, milk or cereal or just some day-to-day foods that someone contacts on a daily basis, having those available for the child. That way the child learns how to demand or how to tact, which basically that means asking for something that's present in the environment and contacting reinforcement right away by, for example, Mom, I want milk. The milk is right there, so mom gives the child the milk, or the child gets himself. That's a very great tool to use, not only with food, but obviously with everyday life experiences, such as like shower time, pointing to the restroom that it's shower time, so the child will go in there. That's something that can be useful. Having activities throughout the day, such as therapy time between parents and children, even though it's not necessarily therapy on a day-to-day basis. But I think engaging in like some puzzle time or some one-on-one time, even talk time, or listening to music and then maybe singing it out loud, just any way that can increase that interaction between the family and the parents. A lot of times music is very helpful, because sometimes the child will just start listening to the music and will start engaging in echoic behaviors where they're singing along, and that's very reinforcing to them too. So that's another tip. Having preferred toys and activities that are self-reinforcing and engages the child or the person to engage in more participation in those activities is very important. So having very high stimulating toys around in the individual's environment is very important to have them at all times. For example, if you're at home, having those around at all times is very important. And let's say that you as a family go out with your child to the grocery store, you know that the child might have a tantrum or so in the grocery store. It's very important to have these preventative measures where, like, if you know that the child might have a tantrum for some sort of chocolate, just giving the child maybe a piece of candy before going to the grocery store is a huge tip that might help, prevent those tantrums from happening in a public setting. Also, just waiting is very important. Being patient. So waiting for the child to initiate communication is very important, even if it's a little hum or if it's just a little subtle communication, way of communicating with somebody. That's very important, because if the child is trying to communicate something, it's very important to try to encourage the child to speak what they're trying to say, and basically not punish that behavior by ignoring them or anything like that. That's very important. And just rewards are very, very beneficial. So rewarding the child with responses and access to those desired objects. So if the child wants to, if the individual wants to watch some TV later at night, well then let's work on some like some texting skills or manding skills throughout the day, and then you get your access to the video game or preferred activity. Those are very important things that families can incorporate on a day-to-day basis, so that it is adding to that communication skill piece for that individual.
Okay. So, that was very, very helpful. Thank you so much. Could you also give us some strategies of generalizing? I know we spoke about the Spanish population, and I know that we can also start and do the same with like other speaking languages, but do you have any ways of like generalization and maintenance of skills across different cultures, different languages,
Yes, thanks, Juhi. Thank you, Juhi. Yeah, for sure. I think that a very important tool would be to advise the families to talk to their personal care physicians. As soon as families notice that there's some sort of irregularity or just something abnormal about someone, it's always very important to to communicate with the physician and to really listen to what the physician's recommendations are. If there are any books that are out there that a doctor is providing for the family, read it. Please read it. I cannot stress enough how much the world can change by just simply reading these great resources. So I think talking to the doctors are very important early on. That way we can get an accurate diagnosis as soon as possible, and we can use these evidence-based approaches with these families. And also I think that a lot of families might be not afraid, but just kind of nervous about speaking up and just about asking these questions that they might not have ever contacted in the past. I just want to say, please don't be afraid. It's okay. There's many parents out there that are in the same situation you are. So I just want to stress the fact that it's okay. If you have a question, there's never a wrong or bad question. Please ask away. If you're not getting the answers you hope for, or or you know, the knowledge that you hope for from a physician, please reach out to, you know, to resources online, Facebook groups online that are all across the world, and there's a lot of great resources out there that are really trying to disseminate ABA into other different countries. So please don't be afraid of reaching out and speaking up. And eventually we want to try and turn around this you know, this system of being inappropriately diagnosed or undiagnosed. We want to turn the system around. So I think really asking and reaching out and doing your own research is very important. And I understand that there's not a lot of time in the day sometimes, but we have to make time for those important necessities and needs in our lives. And the more we contact that quickly, the more we can figure it out and come up with a plan. But I think definitely as long as families, you know, use those you know, those strategies that I was talking about earlier with communication and their children, you know, eventually, you know, children might learn to communicate with them, like what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and these are all great tools that will be needed when assessments come up or questionnaires come up. You know, sometimes if the parents don't understand how to answer something, that's fine. You know, you can always complete the questionnaire later. First, try to figure out what is truly the question, because all those little small details are very important to help generalize, you know, these behaviors into other languages and other settings. But I think the foundation is truly with you know, to start early, and don't let the days go by, because time goes by very quickly, and I think that that's something very important to stress. So always try to reach out.
I think time goes by really fast because, you know, we just started the program, and hey, you know, you're in the third semester now of your PhD. Congratulations to you.
Yeah.
And we wish you all the best of luck, and we love you, and keep on doing all the good work, and we're always there to help and support you, and you're always there to help and support us at BASIS. So we do look up to you, and my staff in Pakistan, which is a huge amount of staff, by the way. Hopefully, you know, maybe you'll get a chance to meet them one day. But you know, you are already overseeing our staff here in Chicago. So thank you so much for doing that. We really appreciate all your efforts. We love you a lot. Thank you so much for being here. And we'll hopefully see you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jugi. I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope that this was helpful. And please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.